when you have a job that perfectly aligns with your own value system, there is never a day that I go to work and I question, why am I here? Never a day. There are days that you feel daunted. And I have to say, let me go next door to the coffee shop and buy a cup of hot mocha to calm my spirit. My name is Mickel Jackson. I'm Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice. I'm someone who believes in people just having an appreciation of history, having this concept of service above self, giving back to society, contributing as best as possible in our own space and ways, and however we can just make somebody's life better. I remember there was a situation growing up. Grew up in a single parent household. My mom is a teacher. And at the time, I didn't know that, we just didn't have much. And my mom is someone, when you cook a big pot on Sunday, it lasts until Friday afternoon. And I remember I used to share out her food and give a little boy who used to pass the house to go to high school every day because he didn't have anything to eat. And she was saying, how my food I finished so much. And, it was afterwards that she found out that that was what I was doing. And I'm a mom myself now, and my son has done the same thing, wherein he wants to give back. I remember he gave away a bicycle, for example, because the lady said to him that her children didn't have anything to ride. So I live by that mantra of how we can support others and just how we can just make somebody's life just better in whatever way we can. So I think my calling at JFJ supports that. There are days when you're worried about funding to support staff salary, to support the utility bills, to support going out in the communities to educate people. There are days that you worry about that, but there's never a day that I've questioned, why am I here? Because I'm settled in this job, because I believe that it gives a sense of purpose at this moment. And it's a job that I believe in JFJ. I believe in the value system there. And again, it's perfectly aligned.
Give me a kind of overall assessment of your stewardship to date. Some of the things that you would have wanted to do
Mhm.
when you took over, where you are with those, and as you look towards the future, where are those?
Um, I self assess a lot, but I will leave it to my board to give that full assessment and the Jamaican people. But there are some things as executive director that you want to do. You want to ensure that the organization is sustainable. But even in that quest for sustainability, there is always the principle that you want to work yourself out of a job because you want to see a Jamaica that live and let love, so to speak, a Jamaica where the rights of people are respected, promoted. So that is what you want in that big picture while you still trying for sustainability, where the staff members, they have good wages, they have good staff benefits. You want to ensure that you have sufficient funds to go out in the communities to do public education. And that is something, let me say, I'm very passionate about. And we've started the work in that respect. So, for example, we have some Know Your Rights book. We purchased a bus. We purchased our tents. We have our justice stores across the island. The team was just in St. Elizabeth last week at BB Coke, and there's a little video where the children are singing about their rights. That is what I envision for JFJ, and I'm proud to say that it's a shared vision among the team where Jamaican citizens are aware of their rights so you can hold the government to account. Another part of what I hope to achieve is contributing towards, again, the families who have been waiting for justice for many years. I think it's unfortunate. Actually, it's a grave injustice that you can have a family member killed by a state agent, and then you have a couple years before the matter even make it to the coroner's court. Then it goes to the coroner's court, and it's there for another few years. And then you may find that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution may opt not to charge, or if they charge, the prosecution process takes another couple of years. So again, I made mention of, for example, the Matthew Lee matter. The trial seems to be progressing now, but the trial date is actually set for April 2025. That's over a decade since the young man was killed by the state. That type of injustice is what I want to see being stamped out. Because when the state is the abuser, is the perpetrator, I think there ought to be a greater impetus on them to fix the system, to hold themselves to account. It should not be that over a decade has passed and poor Jamaicans have not seen justice, have not realized justice. So that is something I hope that collectively, all of us as Jamaicans can join that call to say, listen, no more. Sometimes when I hear criticism about criminal rights defenders, that has never deterred anybody at JFJ. Rather, it inspires us to do more because I'm remembering that woman that we're supporting. I'm remembering Mercer Phrase that we're collectively supporting. I'm remembering the person with disability who says that, listen, I've been turned away from a job because of my disability. That is what drives us. So we're not cowering in fear over here when people give criticism. Rather, it sparks something to say, how can we support? That is the work of JFJ. And again, I'm so proud to even be a little part of the history going forward in that legacy of justice.
Are you worried that we are not doing, and I say we, I'm not even sure who are the we, and we
Mhm.
are not doing enough to protect the rights and freedoms of not only the vulnerable,
Mhm.
but of those persons who can protect them, but it's almost like there is a campaign of intimidation to
Mhm.
prevent people from speaking
Mhm.
in this country. And because of your aims and objectives, the Jamaicans for Justice would seem to fall in the direct line of fire
Mhm.
of some of those persons opposed to the work that you do on other persons expressing their rights and freedoms. Is Jamaicans for Justice comfortable with the trajectory of how those things are going, of where they are going?
I look at it from two lenses. Things that individuals say and where the state or the government is going. And let me start with the government. Recently, there was a conversation about fake news and so on. And I issued caution in that respect to say that Jamaica is one of the countries across the Caribbean, unlike even Trinidad, for example. In 2013, we removed sedition from our books. In other words, a journalist, the media, would not see themselves being liable for defamation where it is a criminal offense. So if defamation come about now, it's treated as a civil matter because people have a right to protect themselves, right? So I think when the state is going towards those possible legislative processes, for example, journey, proposals, then it is a cause of concern because are we making a regressive step? Not to say that fake news and so on ought not to be dealt with, but I think it ought to be dealt with by empowering people more, utilizing the GIS. So, in other words, if I see something on TikTok and Instagram that says we only have two branches of government, automatically I know that nothing can go so because there are three. There are
Mm-hmm.
three. So when you are educated and informed, you are able to say fake news, real information. So I think
Ah,
educating the population makes a difference without going into that legislative framework because we do have good laws like the Defamation Act on our books already. So I think the media also needs to be making a recommendation before the Constitutional Reform Committee for press freedom to be enshrined in the Constitution so that there's greater level of protection. The reason I'm saying that, you may find that new laws like data protection, they're good laws, but whether or not sometimes there are some things that can undermine press freedom in the provisions of those particular legislation. So, for example, Cybercrime Act, I believe, speaks to obscene publication. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure if you know what that terminology means. But when you have terminologies big and broad in scope like that, very abstract, are there any possibility, or is there any possibility for press freedom to be so undermined? So the media, the Press Association, the Media Association, with the greatest of respect, I think needs to be doing a little bit more in that regard to say the press ought to be protected in the Constitution of Jamaica. But again, we have to be paying attention to pronouncements being made by the government with the fake news and the hate speech legislation, and one must question what is the goal of these proposals. To the public, I believe in freedom of expression, which would include free speech. So there are times when I'm seeing things on social media about JFJ and about myself that it's heartbreaking that you're doing a job that is giving of yourself in many respects, because for non-profit organizations, we are not able to pay things like pension and health benefits for individuals. So you have to have that keen sense of justice and wanting to give back to your country to stay in this sector for very long. So when you see hateful comments on social media, it breaks the heart of the team. It does. But again, it also inspires us to go to the community interventions to educate and inform and change perspective. So when people call the office, sometimes filled with anger and make disparaging comments, when I take those phone calls to explain to them the positions that we have taken. But it can be disheartening though when, because I've experienced like the rape threats coming via social media. Yes, um, threatening comments. For example, I was on a news station one evening. I won't call the news, but they have a YouTube platform, and I was looking at the YouTube comments, and there was one that said that if you remember that incident where the people were killed, I believe in St. Catherine Old Harbour, on the play field, the football field.
Yes, that
Several people were
you're
killed.
shot. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
shot, and some
Yeah.
killed. And one of the comments was that I should have been there. There is a video recently, I haven't watched it, but people have called saying, Mickel, this is a threatening video. You need to report it to the police. I haven't heard anything concrete as to what the actions of the police entail. But I say this to say that it can be disheartening. Sometimes you get a little bit afraid and you have to protect yourself and your team, because I never want anybody at JFJ who's within my report to feel like they can't do their work. So, as the first among equals, you want to protect your staff as best as possible. But even though the threats or the threatening comments are being made, we're not discouraged, because again, it puts a fire in you to say we are needed more so than ever. So if they were trying to intimidate us, it's the opposite effect that it's having, because we are so now empowered to say we are needed, somebody must do the work, and you're carrying on the legacy of Dr. Gomes, Susan Goff, Carol Narcisse, and all the other members, Susan Evans, and all of the former members of JFJ. That's what you're doing.
Based on your training, based on your academic qualification and experience,
Mhm.
if you weren't working at JFJ, if you didn't have the passion for this, what else could you be doing?
I
Or
would
would you?
still, I would still be in the development sector. I'm attorney in training right now.
Okay.
So eventually, I don't know, it will come right back, because it's, again, my passion is still tied to providing support somehow to the most marginalized. So even if not JFJ, it will still be with a non-profit organization or some international development organization in some way. This is my calling.